Welcome to Books of the Book. We are studying 1 Thessalonians together. I'm John Pauline, and with me is my pastor, John Ciccarelli. And John, what are we studying today?
Well, John, we are starting 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. So we've really worked our way through the book, and we're getting towards the end of 1 Thessalonians. And today we're going to look at 1 Thessalonians 5, 1 through 11, where Paul is writing about the day of the Lord and challenges them to be ready. So let's take a look at that today.
So he's talking about the second coming in chapter 5, and he's been talking about also in chapter 4. In chapters 4 and 5, there's a whole series of encouragements, exhortations to the church, some issues that they were having. He encouraged them the first 3 chapters, and now in 4, he's talking about some sexual issues that they had in the church. There's some lazy people who quit their jobs. There's some concerns about what happened to the dead and how that relates to the second coming. The beautiful thing about that is, there are people like that in every church that have their struggles, have their funny ideas and so on. Sure. And yet he treats them all as part of the family. Yeah. And that's encouraging to me that a person is in Christ and so on. Our lives may be a little up and down here and there, but there's a trend. Mm-hmm. He says, more and more, we can get this fixed up. Mm-hmm. And here in chapter 5, he's not talking so much knowledge now. Okay. You got to get a right knowledge to understand these things. Now he's talking about attitude, I think, a bit more. How to be ready for the second coming. So it's more of a spiritual preparation. There are evidently people in the church who are setting dates for the second coming of Jesus, which we can talk about a bit. That's not usually helpful. And also, there was a whole theology in the Roman Empire that the empire, the Pax Romana, the empire provides peace and safety, peace and security. And for a lot of people, it's like, things are never going to change. Mm-hmm. What do you mean second coming of Jesus? What do you mean end of the world? Things aren't going to change. Everything's solid, everything's secure here. And so you had people in the church that were overly secure and people who are overly excited. So Paul's saying, what is a balanced kind of readiness here? Now, one important background to this chapter is there's a whole series of contrasts that we'll get into, and they show the two sides of judgment. For a lot of people, judgment is a negative thing. Mm-hmm. God comes in, he judges you. This is not good. But what they don't realize is you take the word judgment and run it all the way through the Bible, it is positive as often or more often than negative. For example, in the Garden of Eden, God judges Adam and Eve by sending them out of the garden. But at the same time, he gives them clothing and he gives them promises of what he's going to do for them. He balances the negative judgment with positive. Cain is cast out from his family, but God marks him so that nobody will kill him. So he's protecting Cain at the same time that he's being negatively judged. The flood story is certainly a negative judgment on the earth, but God provides an ark to save as many who are willing to come in. Nobody needed to stay out, you see. So God was not anxious for anybody to perish in that flood. Those that perished were the ones who didn't take advantage of the positive judgment that he offered. So and when you come to Abraham, it's interesting because you have the Tower of Babel, which is negative, right. But the positive side is the story of Abraham, who God calls to save those nations that were judged at the time of the Tower of Babel. So you have this positive, negative idea of judgment, and that's mirrored in chapter 5 here by a series of contrasts: light and darkness, day and night, drunk and sober, armed and defenseless. There's a whole series of these contrasts showing the two sides of judgment, and we are at the place. Readiness is all about being on God's side in those contrasts.
That's so interesting, John, because I don't think that's often heard. This positive side of judgment. Oftentimes it's got such a negative connotation to it. Judgment is, God is getting out his hammer, and he's going to crush you, if you're not. It's often a negative, sad thing, but yet there's this whole positive side that you're talking about. And so I think it'll be interesting as we unpack this more in this lesson. So let's continue to move on.
Yeah.
And,
well, in your experience as a pastor, which of these two has had a bigger impact on people?
Well, I think that the negative side has been heard more, maybe, or understood or perceived, that way. But when we proclaim the judgment in a positive way, that God is going to bring justice, that God is going to right the wrongs, that's good news. That is the gospel. It's such a one, and we see it over and over in the Old Testament. That God is, don't worry, I'm going to send the Messiah. I'm going to send somebody to make this right. So I find when it's spoken of, when the positive side is really brought out, then people begin to see the judgment as, hey, this is actually kind of a good thing, and not something to fear necessarily.
And I think if more people had been willing to come in, God would have built a bigger ark before the flood. No, it's not God's desire to destroy people.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, if He had wanted to do that, He could have done it thousands of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
There's no question about it. So the fact that God is not, wiping everything out, and that's not what He's about. He is giving time for people to repent. He's giving opportunity for people to find the safety, and that's the positive side of judgment. In the Bible, judgment is used both ways. We in the Western world tend to use it more negatively, and that demonstrates how one of the issues we have in studying the Bible is we can be influenced by the way those same words are used in our culture. The Bible comes to us in English, for you and me. It's a language we're comfortable with. We hear it every day on the street, and it's easy to import into the Bible meanings of words and ideas that are comfortable to us. But when you actually let the Bible be its own interpreter, it often changes what you thought it was actually saying.
Yeah.
So when it comes to judgment, it's way more positive. In fact, the Jews often celebrated judgment in the Old Testament. They were rejoicing. Hey, God's going to judge these people who have been hurting us, and He's going to take them out of the way, and we're going to be restored to happiness and health and so on. Judgment was a positive thing for the Jews back then. I'd like to turn to the passage in chapter 5 and verses 1 to 3. He says, "Now concerning the times and the seasons, brothers." Maybe we should just stop right there. Now concerning the times and the seasons. This "now concerning" is based on a Greek phrase that appears over and over and over again in Paul's writings. And whenever it appears, it's an answer to a question from the church.
Okay.
And Corinthians, you have it all the way through. Now concerning this, now concerning that. He's gotten a report from Timothy. Here's some questions people have. And so now concerning, when we get to chapter 5 here, Paul is answering a question they have been raising about the times and the seasons. All right? So what are these times and seasons? That's something we want to file away for a minute here. Now concerning the times and the seasons, brothers, you have no need to be written to. So he's kind of saying, guys, you ought to know these things. You have no need to be written to, for you yourselves accurately know that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. When they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction will come upon them, just like labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. So he says, you have no need to be written to. And then he says, when they say peace and safety, who's the they? That's not the church. See, that's the Romans saying that. The people out there are saying peace and security, the empire. That's what it's all about, guys. This is paradise, you see. And God's people are realizing it's anything but paradise. That's kind of a fantasy land here. What are these times and seasons all about? Well, if you go to Acts chapter 1 and verses 6 and 7, and perhaps you could read that for us.
Sure. It says, "So when they had come together, they asked him, 'Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel?' He said to them, 'It is not for you to know times or seasons that the Father has fixed by His own authority.'" All
right. So what are the disciples doing in this chapter? They're saying, when, is this the time of the kingdom?
When's it going to happen?
When's it going to come? They want to know the when.
Yeah.
They want to know the details.
Don't we all?
You see? And don't we all? Yes. And what does Jesus say?
Yeah.
It's not for you to know. So the Thessalonians are asking a question that Jesus has already answered. And Paul's saying, you don't need to be written to on this question. This is not really critical for you because you should already know these things. Now, in this passage, 1 Thessalonians 5, 1-3, Paul uses a triple analogy. You may remember at an earlier program we talked about how the Bible often uses analogies and metaphors to get a point across. And here he uses the day of the Lord, first of all. In Old Testament times, the day of the Lord was kind of the end of the world that was coming. And so he picks up on that language from the Old Testament. Then he talks about pregnancy and contractions. It's an analogy for the second coming of Jesus. And then he talks about a thief in the night. You see, and I remember someone saying to me just today, I had to get up 3 times last night because the alarm went off. You see, and the thief in the night is something that that one can be very concerned about. Now, what are these analogies saying? What's the day of the Lord? What's the thief in the night? What's the pregnancy? What are all these saying? It's saying the coming of Jesus will be sudden. It'll be unexpected, and it'll be inescapable when it happens. Pregnancy, you may know roughly when the pregnancy will end, but you don't know when the contractions will start, and they're almost always inconvenient when they come. Thief in the night, you can probably guess that one is likely to come sometime, but you don't know when. So there's that uncertainty, there's that surprise, that suddenness that comes. So these are the analogies that Paul is using here.
One time I was having a conversation with someone who, he said he was a Jew for Jesus, but I think his stance wasn't the typical Jew for Jesus stance. But in my conversation with him, something became very apparent to me. He said, I'm a Jew, so I'm part of Abraham, and so I have that security. And then he went on and said, but I've also decided to accept Jesus as the Messiah. And he flat out told me, he said, I have my bases covered. In case Jesus doesn't pan out, I'm related to Abraham. But if Jesus really does turn out to be the real deal, then I'm going to be okay. And just that sense of not really trusting God and resting, in the not knowing, in the unexpected. But we know the one who is behind it, trying to set up our own security, if you will, And I tried to talk to him about that, but I think he continued to want to rest in his own security system, if you will.
Well, I think Paul's message here is the time to prepare is now. I remember one time when my mom, I don't know who was preaching it, my mom came to believe that Jesus was going to come in 1964. And that was impressive. And I made some serious plans as a 9-year-old kid to start getting ready in 1962.
There you go.
And 1962 came and went, and I kind of forgot about it. So you see, you put it too far away, and people put it off. You put it too soon, and they get disappointed. So date setting is not a positive experience, I think, very much. Well, it's time to go to a break, and we'll continue when we come back.